Good morning. Hopefully you've been enjoying your reading adventure with us through the Gospels. Today I have the privilege of covering the book of Mark, chapters 9 through 11, and there's plenty we could get into here. We see Mark's account of the Transfiguration, the triumphal entry, Jesus cleaning out the money changers from the temple. We see him cleansing a boy of an unclean spirit. We see his interaction with the rich young ruler. And yet what I believe God has put on my heart today to point out to you comes from the end of chapter 10. And there's two instances where Mark records, one right after the other. Jesus asks the same question, but in two separate situations. And we see two different answers to it, or at least the motivation for them. So let's get into that. Starting in verse 35, we see James and John, the sons of Zebedee, two of the disciples, along with Peter, who got to be witness to the Transfiguration, where Jesus is revealed in greater glory. Moses and Elijah appear on either side, so they are witness to this. And that may be what drives this question, ultimately. But we see them coming up to Jesus and asking for a favor. So in verse 36, we read, "And he, being Jesus, said to them, 'What do you want me to do for you?' And they said to him, 'Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory.'" Doesn't sound like a very kingdom-driven request. It sounds very selfish, very self-glorifying, very self-gratifying. And Jesus goes on to provide a different answer than they expected. Not sure he was overly thrilled with the request, and we definitely see, going through the end of that little story, the other disciples, once they heard about it, were definitely not thrilled at the request. Then Mark moves on, and the next account we see starts in verse 46. Jesus and the disciples have moved on. They're in the city of Jericho, and as they're walking through, there's a blind beggar named Bartimaeus who's sitting by the roadside. And somehow he's aware that Jesus of Nazareth is walking through, and he's also aware of the power that this Jesus of Nazareth seems to have, because he's making a request that he knows only one person would be able to do. And the way we see that, I apologize, is we see him calling out things like, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, have mercy on me." And obviously he's doing this multiple times because it references that many people are rebuking him and telling him to be silent, so he's obviously making quite the nuisance of himself. And yet he accomplishes the goal. He gets Jesus' attention. It says Jesus stops and says, "Call him," and the disciples bring him over. And then we see the interaction here in verse 51. It says, "And Jesus said to him, 'What do you want me to do for you?' And the blind man said to him, 'Rabbi, let me recover my sight.' And Jesus said to him, 'Go your way, your faith has made you well.'" So in this instance, it's still about self. I need you to do something for me, but Jesus is prompted the question. And his response is, "I want you to restore your sight, which I know you have the power to do." There's a difference in the request. But I'm intrigued by this because I think, what is our response? If Jesus were to ask us, "What do you want me to do for you?" how would we respond? When we go to him in prayer as our intercessor, if we think about, is his question in response to us when we engage in prayer, "What do you want me to do for you?" Are our responses selfishly motivated? Are they for our own self-gratification and self-glorification? Are we asking for wants versus needs? Are we asking for something that only Jesus can do for us to help us to live the life that he has called us to? We see through his teaching in the Gospels, we see through the Word, the life we are called to is what MCC stresses, that we are called to love God, love people, and live on mission. Are our responses tied to that? Do they point to one of those three things, or all three of those things? Are we doing something to, are our requests based on helping to further God's kingdom? I would ask you to think about those things. Think about if Jesus were to say, "What do you want me to do for you?" How would you respond, and why? Hopefully that's been some food for thought for you, and I hope you have a great day.